one of the most valuable assets you can have in many markets is a voice and a distinctive voice and a distinctive point of view, because lots of things that were moats a year ago are no longer moats.
Cheryl Kellond, I want to start with concrete operating truths on what got you from 0 to 10 million in ARR at Apostrophe over a 4-year period. So when you think about that growth trajectory and that result, what did you instrument? Like, what did you install that was critical in creating that kind of growth?
So it's so funny because you say 10 million in ARR, and like, I think people hear that and they're like, wow, that's awesome. I think back at that time and I was like, oh my gosh, everything was pure chaos behind the scenes. It was a little bit of spaghetti throwing against the wall. And because we had taken outside capital, it was wildly insufficient. It was all those things at the same time. The second thing that comes to mind is, what did I instrument? No, what was my weekly plane flight circuit? Detroit, Indianapolis, Pittsburgh. Detroit, Indianapolis, Pittsburgh. Every third week I'd go to St. Louis. That's what 10 million in ARR look like, is in that case founder-led sales on the plane while trying to scale up a proper sales and marketing and lead gen team alongside me and making a ton of missteps along the way.
So what I'm hearing you say is a couple of things. One is it wasn't all it was cracked up to be. And right? On the outside, it looked great. On the inside, it looked messy. Now, here's a question for you, which I find interesting. Are you doing the thing where women apologize about their success?
Oh, hell no. No, 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 no. In that 10 million growth, like, I had to let go of 2 co-founders. I hired the absolutely wrong person at the wrong time to lead sales because I was getting pressure from my VCs, and we were losing some customers. We were firing other customers. Oh, no, 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 no. I am not sandbagging my success.
What is your observation of that accomplishment? Do you regard it as an achievement?
Oh, now this is where I'll sandbag my success and I'll say, well, no, really, because I could have. But like, look, it's all a process and learning. So yes, there was a lot in there that was success. We did stuff no one else was doing. We were making it work. We were learning as we went. I think the real pivotal point around it, the really core of it was, what's that point when founder-led sales has to move to the background and team-led sales moves to the foreground. And as a growing company, no matter what your revenue number is for the year, that happens at different points. And it was a transition that I was not prepared for. I didn't develop a bench around me that could sort of advise on different case studies. And I was a little bit relying on my investors, and that was a very bad idea.
So this is interesting. So basically you're saying, look, 10 million, what I'm hearing you say is 10 million in ARR in 4 years was painful. So it wasn't as good as it looked. And one of the reasons that it wasn't as good as it looked when I look back on that experience is that I didn't have some of the infrastructure I needed. It was a founder-led sales model that required me being on the plane, leveraging a small network of investors, and their connections. And I wasn't able to build the architecture around. Is that accurate?
Yes, and it was also a damn big deal because at the same time, I had better funded competitors that didn't hit 10 million ARR in sales. So you're right. I'm not going to back down from that. That was huge. And we needed to go through a transition on the sales side.
So what was it? So let's pretend for a second that an alien, you know what I mean? Or we get this, it's like a version of amnesia where we can only look at the things that worked. Because I want to look at the stuff that didn't work, but we can only see that 10 million ARR number and we can only see the things that worked. Because I think this is instructive. So when you look at that, what worked? What were the installations or the infrastructure that made it work?
Yep. So I'm a learn by doing kind of gal. You can't always know everything up front. What we did really well
Yeah.
is I had a sales counterpart who would work the market. He built the network. He figured out who our sales channels were. He warmed up the room, and I would go out and I would put a face of trust and like the buck stops with her because we were a small company selling health plans to larger employers. So they needed to know where it stopped. That was a part that wasn't going to go away for a long time. And that trust and that like, oh, there's an extra set of hands here. I, the decision maker, feel okay trusting my career to this decision. I don't think that was ever going to go away. So that was good. And it was good that we did that because again, someone else is working the room, someone else is doing the paperwork. It's not, you know, founder held the whole sale on her back. Founder did what she could do that was magic. And it meant I was in market enough to take back things from the market and bring them back to the team in a
Mm,
really efficient way. Like my most productive days of the week were the ones that I wasn't on the road and I was back in the office because then I could play. It was, pre-COVID. So it was a walk around manager. And I'd be like, ooh, this is what I'm hearing from the client. Here's the thing that doesn't feel right here. I'm gonna give you guys a nugget of insight from the road. Go do your jobs.
right. So it was like that ability to contribute high level sense making, battle tested insight, that to inform product, customer service, all of that.
Bingo. And I had really strong operational leaders internally that could take and run with that and make it work. So there was a lot of stuff we did right. And I don't think we were too young as a company. We were selling to employment. We're selling $1 million contracts. We had $1 million contract. We had, ones in the hundreds of thousands, but $1 million contract, like, yeah, you're going to have to meet the founder no matter how big the company is at that point.
So, what's interesting to me is what I'm hearing is that, and I think this is going to apply to a ton of companies who aren't necessarily venture backed, but they are selling meaningful contracts into B2B environments that
Yep.
are complex, could potentially be
Yep.
regulated. And what you did was that you divided your sales architecture, actually divided lead generation and prospect development and a certain amount of sales enablement from the closing function. And so while the sales closing function, while the founder led sales, you were a closing function as the founder, certainly that created some bottlenecks, but fewer bottlenecks than if you hadn't done that separation. My curiosity is that idea of prospect development and finding somebody. So I know people are listening and they're like, I've got to find that person, to do that. What's your experience around that? Is it a person? Is it a function? Like looking back, you could live it forward, but looking back, how do you see that?
That first hire is actually a person because once you start to hire functional people, they know their role and they know how they did it at a company that was ready for just that function. Because that's where, you know what, if now that we're pulling this apart, that's where actually we tripped up. Is after I raised a little more capital and my board was like, well, you got to scale sales, so you need the functional people. You need a VP of sales. You need whatever lead gen this or something else that. And I brought in functional people. And they had worked at like mid-sized companies, so they were used to growing fast. They were a little more hands-on than a big corporate person, but it was premature because we were still in the phase of really figuring out that product market fit and market pull. So my best guy, or it was the guy, right? Like he could be the guy on the ground. He could do all the things. He's thought like a startup hustler.
How did you compensate him? Because that's a question that a lot of founders will have. How do you compensate in a role like that? I'm curious what it looked like, as much as you can feel comfortable sharing about that, but it's so practical and juicy and useful.
I mean, everyone says if it's someone, that sort of owns quota or owns sales, compensate them based on that. But that's when you have a predictable model and a predictable funnel. If you want someone to hustle alongside you to figure out what the best shape for the business is, I mean, there was some performance based comp, but it was a bigger salary based and stock based comp. Like, right? Because otherwise you're going to be, and people can disagree with this if they want, but otherwise you're going to be like a heat-seeking missile to what might be tactical revenue. I needed someone to be a partner on, do we say yes or no to this client? How do they help us build in a way that compounds
Mm.
versus exhaust us? And we fired clients. I was at a point that we were not at, we were still a little bit subscale on our operations. And I was like, this client's costing me more than they're worth. I can't afford that right now. They're not going to compound. So if someone's on a performance-based comp, they don't love getting told no.
And it interests me because this is the second time this concept of compounding has come up, and that ability to do things that compound. What was a decision that you made, that a structural decision you made that enabled compounding?
You know what? I'm going to take this question and apply it to my current business because there's a structural constraint on my last business, which is at that point that we were moving to scale and seeing what could compound and putting functional leaders in, we slammed smack dab into a pandemic, and I was selling a self-insured employer health plan. And you know what people don't do? If you're running a steel mill that needs to remain operational during a pandemic that no one understood, guess what? You're not recommending to all your other steel mill friends that they switch their health plan while they're trying to keep forge workers alive and not die. So there was a structural constraint to that story, but it's top of mind right now in my current business, which is called Play Money. In the simplest terms, it's an angel investing platform. But we are at the point now of it's a place that we need to find new pools of capital to tap into, because what we do really great on Play Money is we mint net new investors. There's a whole pile of capital that wants to be in early stage startups because it generates wealth, but it also right now in this whole time of crazy, it creates impact and it feels real and it feels useful and it's very powerful money. And you know what all that money coming online looks like. It's younger, it's more female, it's more diverse. It doesn't look like the old money. So it's really antsy to get in. And so what we're grappling with right now, I think the opportunity you have is how do we cut through the space with a super authentic voice that builds trust and builds reflection and recognition in a very scalable and compounding way. And what does the team behind that helps make that compound really need to do? And not just the marketing team, but the biz dev team, right? We have communities of people coming to us and saying, hey, our people want to do the startup investing thing. We have this trusted community. That trusted community could be a fractional functional organization, like a 900-person community of fractional HR people. It could be a university, because we just signed a big university contract. It could be large affinity groups. And it's how do we take that thing that's magic in this point when we're still trying to figure out what's going to rocket ship us? How do we take this thing that's magic and make it compound across those different surfaces? And what does that look like from a team structure and a job function and a role? Because it's obviously not me doing all that work, but it's also not a machine.
Is it about how do you scale? Are you talking about how you scale relationships? So I sort of understand it theoretically, not necessarily practically what you're saying.
More than anything, it's how you scale. And we know this actually from our data. It's how you scale permission and trust. Permission giving and trust.
Say more.
I hear my friends maybe talking about this startup thing, this asset class. I see these founders and these companies building great things. I hear over here that the wealth is being created not by a gamed up stock market, but like getting in early on things that matter. Okay, I think I want to do this. Where do I go? And if I'm there, how do I know to trust this? I'm not buying a pair of shoes for $400. I'm investing $2,500. What do I have to learn? How do I develop that identity as an investor? How do I know I can trust the companies I'm seeing here? Those kind of, it's like psychographic triggers. And then how do we take what we've learned on the platform and scale that through a university community or a women's network or a regional startup community? How do we proxy those things and how do we make that come out in all of our messaging and all of our activities, but also give that to people on the ground to run with?
One of the things, and we were sort of joking at the top of the podcast, I thought I read a sentence that was attributed to you. It actually was allegedly, reportedly, allegedly attributed to you, but we don't actually think it was. So I will source that later. But the quote was, women building $10 million companies are not starting Substacks. Now, you didn't necessarily say that, but you had some opinions on it. And I'm curious, what your sense of that is, because this is something that you're looking at and grappling with right now yourself.
Oh, absolutely. Um, and on face value, it makes sense. Oh my gosh, if you're building a million dollar company, look at me go 10 billion. If you're building a $10 million company, there's a whole bunch of other things you need to be doing. And yet you have operations to run, you have a team to hire, you have to understand your customers. Increasingly, we all are running a third shift, learning AI to equip our teams to be more efficient. So, like, we've all added a third shift. And if you haven't, you
Yeah.
probably should take a minute and think about it. And yet, one of the most valuable assets you can have in many markets is a voice, and a distinctive voice and a distinctive point of view, because technology is no longer a moat. Lots of things that were moats a year ago are no longer moats. Distribution is everything. And there's a level of, in those earlier stages, and again, I love that I think of a $10 million business as early stage, like maybe I shouldn't, but there's a point of view you have that you do have to work out with the market. It's a way people find you. And for our business right now at Play Money, my voice actually is a compounding asset because it's trust building, it's educating. There's a certain thing to it that brings in our target market. So while it doesn't look like it's scalable, and maybe I shouldn't be doing a Substack, actually some of the stuff I do has been very compounding. It's the reason people find us when they search anything about investing on Perplexity.
Yeah, and it's also there is when you look at your work and your platform, there is like a mission behind it, and that mission is anchored in a thesis. And so, for instance, like on your site, there's a really powerful thesis, which I did read.
But I'm just thrilled about it. I was like, you read it? Oh my gosh.
Yeah. There's people who will skim and there's people who are readers who will actually read it. But the interesting thing is that for me, I agree. I think that thesis is a compounding asset. Because it forms the kind of intellectual, the top level architecture upon which it's like a filter upon which who belongs here as an investor, who belongs here as an employee, who belongs here as a partner, who belongs here as a distribution channel. So it does become a really powerful compounding asset. I think the challenge so often when we think about Substack and we think about is that if it's used more as only as a visibility without that underlying thoughtfulness, it just becomes more of the slop that we're all actually trying to increasingly getting fatigued by.
That's a really great observation. And I would say on, this particular, that the white paper has done as much for us inside the company as outside the company. It's directed how we've looked at our data, how we're stacking our work, who we are targeting. It's influencing when we get a new partner, how we are thinking of what we want to develop with them and how we're onboarding them. Because it did put a line in the sand of here's what we do and here's what we believe and here's how we're different. And I've seen over the last 3 months, like the whole process to get to that white paper was so crazy. But over the last 3 months, we've changed our product roadmap. We've changed who we're targeting in market. It's a surface that's been really malleable inside the company. We are moving faster inside the company than maybe even we are getting, new data outside the company because we've given something for people to react to and us to react to. But it's given a baseline and it's been really fun. But it was as impactful internally and I didn't expect
And
that.
when we think about because what you're actually what we're talking about here really is sort of thesis development or identity development, which is different than product development. And what I'm hearing you say is that the thesis informed the product roadmap and the product versus Which begs the question, when you were developing that thesis, was it internally driven? This is what we see, this is what we believe, or this is what our customers want? I'm curious, like, how you yeah.
It was market driven, not necessarily in this is what our customers want and I'm feeding that back. It's this is how I have seen the market change, and this is why we built this thing. I'm gonna call this thing as not a fixed point in time, but we are playing in this space because we see a why now moment around all these market forces. So, like, that's why we started the company because we saw a why now moment and said, okay, so this thing, we're going to figure out how it solves for this why now moment. The thesis was talking about that why now moment. In the process of writing that thesis, I started banging on all our data. And I had capabilities like with AI in February that I
Oh,
didn't
yeah.
have in
It's so
November.
amazing. Yeah.
Right? Like so yeah, the market things are moving quick. And all of a sudden we saw stuff in our data that was like,
Yeah.
oh holy crap. We saw this market change. We have this thesis. We're finally putting that thesis on paper because we needed to use it as a magnet for the right people to come to through us and to us and to think about our product and our distribution strategies. But then we started pulling the data with that lens and we saw things in our data that were like, oh, here's
Yeah.
the next level here. So, like, where we've gone from that paper is like 3 levels deeper, which is why when you and I were pre-prepping or when we just were talking right now, I was like, here's what we do at Play Money. We mint net new private market investors. Because I can show you from the data exactly how we do it and what psychographics we trigger, what behaviors we need to see, what where permission and trust comes in. Like I have this brilliant map of how to do that. And but it came because we had that thesis.
Well, you know what's so ironic? So today I did a small piece of content that was about, there's large conversations happening right now about how in the next 10 to 20 years, we'll see one of the largest wealth transfers in history. Women will control as much as 45% of global wealth. And they're still being seen as as a niche segment to market to as a customer versus an actual capital allocator. And until the system changes to treat this massive capital class as capital allocators, like until the tools and systems for that kind of decision flow happen, you can market it as a power shift, but it's not actually. So I think that's where when you said that, I was like, this is that thesis, in my view, your thesis really holds because this is what we're actually seeing, that you have this massive transfer of wealth to a niche market. So cute. So sweet.
Isn't that cute? I know, and it's so great because, like, it's so Erin, it's so fun because I will never name what that niche market is. I never say the W word. It will never come out of my mouth. But I build from a certain point of view, right? Like, and you know what? In that world, time is the most
Yeah.
precious commodity, not money. So how do we structure for that? And like, so great. Everyone else ignore niche market. And I'm gonna like rack up the stuff on the side, and then I'm gonna get y'all in a room and be like, guess what? This is the biggest insider trading scheme of all times. Because guess what? We own 85% of the purchasing power. So why don't we seed and invest in those things we are going to go purchase down the road? And all of a sudden, we're compounding our money. Every time we buy something, we're making 10x on the valuation over here. How about we do
Well,
that?
because I mean, and to be clear, we've been talking about the thesis. We've been talking about the thesis, but one of the sort of tenets, as I understand it, correct me if I'm wrong, is that most of the capital is going to the same types of companies that need to have at least a $10 billion
Always is.
valuation. So that's where most of the money is going. And it's not that they're wrong, it's that
Yep.
that is the criteria and that there's a ton of money
Yeah.
that could be flowing to amazing high value assets and companies in the making and high potential, but it doesn't fit the criteria. So the criteria hasn't changed. So the capital isn't flowing there. And what that sort of is that a fair understanding of part of your thesis?
Oh, it's even, yes, it is. And it's even better than that right now because in that world of where private capital is flowing, we have a moment where the vast majority of it is flowing to literally a dozen companies. it has become super, super, super concentrated. So you've got a moment of opportunity for all of the rest of the things that both are selling into a big market, so can yield a big return, but also make a damn difference. Like makes our world better, right? Not the thing that's gonna make us all
Yeah.
members of the permanent underclass, but make the world better. Like, solve my endometriosis, please. Come up with better solutions to childcare, please. Like, don't make me the permanent underclass. And so you've got this whole world of innovation with huge markets on the other end, right? So this is investing, but with impact as well that is tremendously undervalued and available to
Yeah.
private market investors. So we're not just picking up the dregs of what wasn't good enough for the fancy investors. Oh no, they're putting all their money into the same 15 things. So there's this world of opportunity right now that's just like phenomenal timing, actually. New money coming on and new money that thinks different and wants to operate different. And this whole realm of new companies being started from a different point of view, solving a new set of problems and priced just
Yeah.
in a lovely, easy way.
It is a huge power moment, and yeah, and you can really see the timeliness of what you're building in that context. I'm curious, when you
Ridiculous.
think about I'm curious about a structural decision that you've made in building this company, that you've made, a structural decision that you've made because you believe it's going to allow for greater compounding, believe it's going to allow for greater scale. Maybe it's based on a mistake you made earlier or something you did well earlier. I'm always interested in the actual structural decisions, that founders are making to create scale.
I love talking about stuff like this because it makes us look so smart. But really what we're doing is like post facto, like wrapping a structure around, oh shit, look, that worked. So I'm gonna indulge in that right now. I mean, I might as well, right? When you build a business, there's a sequence of things you need to figure out. You can't figure it out all at once. So for our business, like think of it in two basic ways. We had to build something people used and and could become sticky. And then once we did that and figured out what that was, then we had to figure out how to distribute it at more scale. Have it serve a buyer or an interested party that could really not even let open up a channel to us, but actually do the work because they were interested in the end result. And my best example of this is like we have a university partnership that wants as much money to flow to campus startups and spinouts as flows to football. And they're an SEC
We're
school.
talking big money, big money.
We're talking big bucks, baby. Yep. 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 They're an educational institution required that is responsible for getting kids jobs and developing their research university. So inventing new technologies, and
Yes,
also
exactly.
winning
And
national
and paying for
championships
their
because
coach's salary.
yes, exactly. Exactly. All of those things. So for us, where we have made smart decisions, and we knew this has to play out over time. Our data doesn't change, right? If you're a repeat investor, you're going to make 5 to 6 investments a year. It might take you 90 days to make your first one. So think of how that slow moving data goes. So where we were smart is we're like, let's focus on that individual investor and let's figure out how we make magic. We knew we wanted repeat investors. Let's figure out how we do that. And we threw a bunch of spaghetti at the wall. And then we were patient. Some things clearly weren't working or weren't paying off. So we, took them off the list, but we kept looking at that data
So it's
as
like
we went.
you were optimizing for I know you're working with investors, not customers, but in a way you made the structural decision to optimize for lifetime value or to optimize for repeat decisions, repeat investments, not just that first. And then once you've made that optimization, it sounds to me like you ran some experiments and you had patience with those experiments to see, and that's what I'm hearing.
Yes. And in those experiments, I write an amazing monthly update to all my investors and everyone on the platform. It's one of the best out there. I will take full credit for this. But I reflected on this recently is that we had gotten some critique from investors that we weren't like structured enough in our experiments. What's your hypothesis? What's the result? And I was like, that's not the shape of the data or behavior that's coming through my platform. So I'm going to take my thesis and my best judgment from having talked to hundreds of potential customers, because I'm the founder of this business. So like my favorite job is talking to customers. And we're going to throw some of that spaghetti on the wall, and then we're going to wait. We're going to see what happens. We're throw more spaghetti on the wall. We're going to let it compound so that at the very minute that the tools out there enabled us to look at that data, we had enough longevity of data to pull real signal from it. Like, because we made gut bets early and we trusted ourselves and we gave ourselves the runway and the time to figure that piece out. And then all of a sudden overnight, we're sitting on this, we're like, holy crap, look at what we've
Well,
been doing.
I
Who
mean,
knew?
when you say a gut bet or, a gut bet early, to me, that's another way of saying you had a thesis. And it's interesting, sort of, there was a very clear thesis that was both informed by the market, but was also sort of mixed with your own observations and sort of this broader view. And it's interesting how that theme of developing a point of view or developing a thesis in partnership with the market, informed by the market, but not just sort of feeding back to the market, right? That is
Right.
critical.
No.
Do you think that is something that's new?
I mean, that's that like lazy, no one asked for, people didn't ask for a car. They just wanted a faster horse. I mean, that's where you're going to end up, right? Like you can't. You got to see something someone doesn't and trust yourself.
And to that point, like that was, I mean, when did he invent cars? I mean, like in the 1800s, right? Or late 1800s, early 1900s, something like that. We are hundreds of years, well beyond that. I'm curious, do you think this idea of thesis development, do you think that's something that is new, that is emerging, or has this always been?
I mean, to start any business, you have to, I mean, thesis to me is like a fancy word for like a point of view or a hot take, right? Like, so I think to start a business, you always have to have a little bit of fire there. What I think has changed is that that little bit of fire or that unique personality that comes along with your point of view is one of your biggest assets in the early days to cut through and find your customers and to find that product market fit and market pull. And now hopefully, we're able to use it for channel and partner pull so we can actually scale like big girl scale. So I don't think it's new, but I think it hasn't been as prominent an asset as we should make it, right? People wanted to sound corporate or clean. And now we're like, how do you cut through the noise? You name your investing site, play
Yeah.
money.
Yeah.
Who does that? I mean, we incubated at a VC firm, and the day we launched the site, like within 15 minutes, my lead investor was on the phone ripping me a new one. Like, this is my receipt. Name's never going to break your company, make your company, but it can break it. I'm just putting my chips on the table now that you made a poor decision. I'm like, sweet,
Oh my
dude.
gosh, that's funny.
Happy Tuesday. It was a bold decision. And most people wouldn't have made it. But like, if you're going to cut through the noise and find your core person, like you've got to, rock above the noise sometimes. And I think people are thirsty for something that feels authentic and reflects their personal identity. And I absolutely admit I probably have scared away as many potential customers as I've attracted, but it makes me wonder if the ones I've scared away would have actually been a customer anyways.
In closing, I'd love to ask you, for a woman running a $1 to $3 million business right now who wants to
Mhm.
be at 10 million, what's one thing you'd say to her?
Own your own voice. Until that business runs itself, it doesn't need you to be involved in founder-led sales. The biggest asset you have is owning your voice.
Powerful. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for tuning into the episode. If you found value in what I shared, please go ahead and like this video, give it a thumbs up, and leave me a review or leave a comment below. And don't forget to subscribe. Thanks so much for being here. We'll see you next week.